Welcome to Aspire, and I Have the Right To podcast, where we amplify voices, share stories, and drive change in the fight against sexual assault. We explore the critical issues surrounding student safety, institutional accountability, and survivor empowerment. In every episode, our goal is to provide insightful conversations with survivors, experts, educators, and advocates, giving you, our listener, valuable information, resources, and actionable steps to create safer environments and cultivate a culture of respect and consent. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Aspire. And I feel like I'm so repetitive each week when we give this introduction, but I am just remarkably excited about our show today because we are having an interesting discussion that I think will be very special today. And prepping for this, I spoke to my co-hosts, Hugh and Gabriel, and I'm challenging them to sort of help lead the discussion today. And I want to take a step back not because I'm tired and jet lagged because I'm sitting in Tokyo, but because I'd rather sit in community with my two guests today, because these are two men who, one I've known for a bit and another I just recently met, but somehow I have a feeling that we are kindred spirits somehow. And I just have the utmost respect for what they've done throughout their lives, and probably most importantly, how they've done it. And maybe today we can get into the discussions about why they did it. But I'm so happy to introduce Sean Doherty and Peter Leboutillier, who are going to join us today, and I will let each one of them introduce yourselves. So maybe I'll turn it over to Sean first, and if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, Sean.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Great to be here, you and Gabriel, and my good friend Peter Leboutillier. A little bit about myself. Grew up in Massachusetts, blue collar kid, was always the underdog. But fortunately, parents were able to send me to a great Catholic high school, St. John's, Shrewsbury High, a road crew, which is where I kind of learned how to get some mental toughness and physical endurance. And then went on to college, got an ROTC scholarship, went into the Army as airborne ranger, then went to a special forces unit, and then served overseas. And then fortunately, I got selected. Don't know how it happened, but someone thought I was worthy of making an elite unit, made an elite unit, did that for several years, and really pushed myself and learned to be able to, that's when I really started getting a better understanding of what the world is about, and then what people are about, and the challenges that people overcome, everyday challenges, and then some physical and emotional. And then I went into government, worked a couple of other government organizations, and was able to travel and see the world and see different sides of life, and see how people endure and overcome and have that resolve and that resiliency. And then, started a business, bet on myself, essentially, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit. Having confidence and being able to bet on yourself and be true to what you believe in. And so then my personal life, I have a wife, 3 boys. One's going to grad school, one's in college, and one's graduating senior. And so 2 of them were hockey players. They actually played with Peter Leboutillier. That's how I met Pete. And I think that's sums up a little bit about it, but it'll give you a background of kind of how the philosophy come about later on in the show. So Pete, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Peter Leboutillier, and I've known Sean for quite a while. I played professional hockey for 9 seasons. In the NHL with Anaheim, and then up and down in the minor leagues with multiple teams. I grew up in Canada in a very small community, about 1,500 people, and then was able to moved away from home at 16 years old to pursue hockey. And in Canada, became, I guess you'd consider it semi-professional when I was 16 years old. Was drafted when I was 17, just a week after high school, and then actually redrafted in when I was 20 and went to Anaheim. From there, I played one season in Baltimore, and then was called up to the National Hockey League my second season. I think 2 years old at the time, and then just kind of pursued that for 8 years until they didn't want me anymore, and then had to kind of reinvent my life and find a new passion. So I got in, like everybody else, got involved in businesses and and then had a family, 3 girls. I have a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 9-year-old girl, and then a 14-year-old boy. So probably, I guess it was 6 years ago, my wife was tired of me. She knew that I missed the game. I completely got out of the game for it was probably roughly maybe 15, 16 years. And then wife encouraged me to get back into the game. I think she knew I needed that game back to help me, and I got into coaching about 6 years ago. And it's probably been the best thing for me, and gave me a lot of purpose and an opportunity to work with young men and try to mentor them and teach them the proper way, not only in the game, but in life. And then, and I've been a head coach for the last two, I guess this will be my 4th season, with a team called Team Maryland. So yeah, that's my story. It's been a journey and a great one. And I've been blessed to meet some great people like Sean along the way. And I think that's probably been the greatest part for me.
Thank you, Pete. And, as we were prepping for this session, and, I was able to do some, reflections thinking about our discussion today. I enjoyed our prep discussion, guys, so much. And I have so much respect for the men that you are now. And when I say that, it has no link to your, the accomplishments that you've had, all the bells and whistles that we love to assemble and put on our shelves, right? It really is, the content. And I say that because I felt so deficient as a man in my younger days. And my journey was really sparked through trauma, right? And we've talked about it on the podcast. Everyone is familiar with it. But that trauma really forced me to change myself and focus, consciously focus on getting to who I knew I was on the inside. But a lot of things had focused me on other things that weren't so important, and definitely made me not as good as I could be in the important roles as a dad, as a husband, as a community member. But what I found fascinating here is the different journeys that each one of you have been on, throughout your life. And if I have to label it with one word, and the one word associated with me is trauma for, this journey. Sean, when I hear you, you're so damn analytical and smart. And so what I really see and comes to my mind is the word evolution, right? And maybe I'll steal a Japanese concept, continuous improvement. You just seemed very logical in terms of saying, this is what I want to be. And it wasn't like wealthy. It wasn't this or that. It was all about, who you are. And Pete, when I've listened to your background, the one word that jumps out to me is transformation, right? And I can imagine, as a youngster, as you said, growing up in a very remote and small town in Canada, and pursuing a passion of a sport, and wanting to sort of chase that dream. The dream isn't chasing that dream isn't what really formed you. It's you made this transformation each step of your life, to be the good man that you are today. And I think the discussions we want to have with young men, and I'll turn it over to you, Hugh and Gabriel, is our young people are having a tough time these days, right? Through the input of social media, through the input of peer pressure, through the access to pornography, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and to the likes of Andrew Tate's and Peterson and all these others, there's a real twisted version of what it means to be a good man today, right? And what we want to provide is examples, and this is why I'm so geeked for today's discussion, because I see great examples of men who've been at the pinnacle of each one of their careers and have lived in environments where very few men live. Yet you've done this with a certain amount of words that you don't usually associate with men who are in those professions: humility, understanding, compassion, etc. And now through our org, I'm sort of living those things every day, and every day I'm just regretting all of the lost time that I've had, where I could have been a better person to so many others. But let's dive into it. So I'm going to turn it over to my absolutely fantastic co-hosts, Gabriel Viscogliosi and Hugh Eastman.
Yeah, so I think especially as high schoolers, we obviously have our own challenges with masculinity, and we have to deal with it at such a young age where we're really ever evolving, and so we don't really have the concept of masculinity fully formed. But I know Sean and Pete, you guys have both had very complex situations and a lot of complex experiences with masculinity. But I think especially for you, Sean, you were in the special forces and you were in that elite unit. And I know you've talked a lot about kind of the mind, body, and soul. So a question I would pose to you is, how were you able to really manage that and keep that at the center while being in the special forces at such a kind of high pressure state? Because us as high schoolers, we do obviously face pressure, but nothing can really amount to what you've been in. So I would wonder and ask, how are you able to kind of hone in on the mind, body, and soul while being in such a high pressure situation and environment?
Sure. Thanks. Well, it really comes down to first, you have some great people, right? So you surround, so fortunately they have assessment and selection, and they assess people that have the right mindset, right? And the right drive for the right reasons, right? Like, you just don't get selected because you want to do it. You have to want to be there, right? Well, that's no different from you in high school. You surround yourself with the right people, the right group, right? The right peer group. It's the same thing. Like, you be a product of your surroundings, right? So if you're in these great specialized units and these great teams, whether it's sports teams or clubs that you belong to, organizations outside of school, it's all about your surroundings, right? And then, are they the same character that you want to be? You want to be around people that you feel good about. So, but coming out of the military in these units, I have the fortunate ability to be around people that already want to be there, that have a certain skill set and a mindset that we're all going to work together. So that made it easy, right? But as an officer, it becomes hard because you're with really, really smart people, right? Just like yourselves and your schoolmates. And so one of the things that you realize is that people look to you, right, for that, like that mind, body, soul. So for me, the mind is, obviously you got to know your profession. You got to be proficient at what you're doing. So in school, it's about academics, right? Here, it's like I read everything. I was reading a book at least like once a week on the profession or an area that I was supposed to go into or where I was going to. Another thing is we had counselors. You have psychologists. You go talk to people. There's nothing wrong with that. It's about getting your mind straight. Sports psychologists. We had other folks. We had also good teammates. You always were very open and transparent. So how you get around that is just being candid with people. Once you're candid and transparent, there's no hang-ups. It's like you can talk about it, and you should feel strongly in being able to do that. And if someone uses it against you, they're not your friend, and you just move on. There's no drama to it, right? Like, they're just not good people. Don't surround yourself by good people. Don't hang out with them. And the fortunate thing, when you're in those units, you don't really have that. You're all a team, right? So it goes back to that sense of community. But that mind is real important. You got to have a strong mind. What also makes your mind strong, like how I was able to do it, is the physical side of it, right? It's like mind, body, right? The body is like, hey, my profession, I had to work out. Like, hey, it depended on it, like my fitness levels, my ability to carry stuff, whether it was rucking for 20 miles or doing pull-ups or being able, but it was also that stamina. Like I told you guys, I rode crew, and that mental toughness of rowing 3 to 4 miles in the fall, or the sprints in the spring. But the runs, the grueling runs we used to do, and thousands of burpees and, jumpies, they call them, like, the body squats and the jump, right? That just got your mind straight, right? Like you were able to show your body was able to push harder, right? Which then you're able to just tell yourself, that's that mind, right? Body, your body can push, right? And your body's physical, but also that body gives you confidence, right? Confidence in who you are, confidence to stand up for something, but also helps your mind stay clear. You're not as fatigued. Your body can be fatigued, but if your mind's clear, you can make those good decisions, right? And then the soul is that moral compass, right? Hey, what's right? You can be a warrior, you can be a killer on the ice, you could be, this really hard person, but it's a show, right? Like you see all these guys on Instagram and everyone talks about, and there are steely-eyed killers out there, and they're phenomenal at it, but they're all compassionate guys. They're not sociopaths, they're not psychotics, right? Why? Because they have the human element of it, right? They go by mind, body, soul, and that's kind of what keeps you grounded, right? Like that moral compass, that being able to have that, like, hey, what's right? Do what's right. Have that humility, right? And be able to, it also allows you to process things, right? You're like, listen, I'm doing something for the greater good. I'm doing this for my teammate. I'm doing this, for my family or for my country, right? Those things are important. And so, those three things kind of helped me ground myself and allowed me to evolve, like Alex said, into opportunities, right? Having a strong mind, body, and soul. It's like I was telling someone the other day, like, how do you get there, right? It's like when they interview you, it's like, or when you go through assessment and selection, it's already a foregone conclusion everyone's in great shape, right? Everyone, you would have gotten there already. What they want is people of character. Hey, when you're stressed beyond beyond belief, and you've been up for 4 days, because they do that in selection, they put you in all these rigorous scenarios. They do these psychological batteries beforehand, and they pair you with the opposite person, right? Like, so if person's like a loudmouth, loser or whatever, they'll pair you with each other, knowing that you don't like them. And so how do you get along? How do you deal with it, right? And so those challenges, like, that's kind of the stuff that you kind of have to have that strong mind, body, and soul, and stay, don't get that short-term emotion, but focus on the long-term goal, right? Like, because you focus on short-term emotion, you'll have a long-term consequence. Like you ring the bell, you quit, or you get kicked out. And so, like, those things are really what kind of grounds me in being able to do that. And that wasn't an overnight thing. Like, you have to fail to be able to get there. You have to be able to fail, step back, reassess. Hey, my first time through Ranger School, I got strep throat mono, got kicked out. I was on a grad in the infantry school, distinguished military graduate out of college, and I was always like working my butt off, and I got kicked out. So I had to go to a light infantry unit, and in Hawaii without a Ranger tab, and then I was able to go back a year later and get it. But that was like, but you just reassess, and I was confident in who I was, right? Like, I was able to get a platoon because I was an honor graduate, but I was able to sustain in that platoon without a Ranger tab, because they wouldn't give you an infantry platoon without a Ranger tab. And so I was able to have it because I proved myself, right? And so proved myself as an effective officer, leader, but also I was compassionate, right? Like, like, you got to be firm but fair. And so, like, you have those trials and tribulations in your life, and it kind of forms you, but you never lose focus of the standard. That's the other thing, is you got to hold, like, how I got there is I held myself accountable. Like, if the standard's X, I wanted to always exceed the standard. And this, no offense to you guys, but everyone's always trying to renegotiate with the teacher, or always renegotiating with the coach or something like that. The standard's been said, then do the standard. Right? It's not hard. Hold yourself accountable. It's the easiest thing you can do. Excuses, everyone can have them, but being able to go look at something and just go and attack it. You know what the task condition standard is. The teacher gave you a syllabus. They gave you the work. You had the classroom. Just go knock it out. Right. Well, that same standard that you hold through school is going to hold through life. And that's kind of, fortunately, I wasn't the greatest student, but I had teachers that believed in me and set me straight, and they set me straight. And But I also learned the easiest thing was I held myself accountable, right? Because if you're going to be a leader of men, like boys leading boys, right? You guys had told me that's what you guys belong to. If you can't hold yourself to that standard, then how are you leading anyone? It's it's the first step. Hold yourself to the same standard. Hold yourself accountable and hold others accountable. And don't you can't like you can't bend the regulations or the standards. I know it's hard, and I give the story. I told Pete the story where this guy, at the unit, he did something bonehead, right? He had an accidental discharge during training. You can't have that, and I had to kick him out. It was the hardest thing. He was an awesome guy, great guy. He's crying. We were crying. I was like, but the standard's the standard. You had an AD. You had an accidental discharge. We have to let you go. And fast forward 4 years later, he's in this other unit. He's doing really well. He's a great American and he's done some great things. But he understood it, right? And the thing about this is he self-reported it. He was all by himself, and that's the type of character that he has. And that person self-reported and had that type of character, and he held himself accountable. But he still, he told us, and we still had to let him go. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but at least it gets the conversation started. Go ahead, Gabe.
Sorry. Thank you, by the way, Sean, for that. I think you hit on a lot of the very important points we talk about, because I heard you talk about failure, accountability, obviously, and then connection. I thought it was funny how he mentioned, them pairing you, military officer, pairing you with someone who maybe they think that you won't like automatically. And that goes to, we've had many conversations about connection and, having people there for you to connect with, no matter what situation you're in. So I really appreciate your answer to the question. I think you hit on a lot of important points. I'd like to turn it over to Pete. Actually, I have a question for him. So I actually, Pete, I actually played hockey for a bit when I was younger. I played until about 5th grade. But I never really got into the physical part of it, because I think the max I got to was Pee-wee, as they call it. So I wasn't hitting, and there wasn't that physical toughness element of it. But about that, I'd just like to ask you, and I think Sean can relate to this as well. I know there's kind of this idea with masculinity of being able to quote unquote tough it out, or get through situations physically without paying attention to your own mental state. So I guess in a broad sense, how have you taken your experience with hockey, and a lot of the physical aspects of it, and maybe potentially fighting, or in a very physically demanding sport, how have you taken that and applied it to discussions of masculinity, or how you see masculinity in your later life now, I guess?
Yeah, like I said, it's a journey, and first of all, it's really tough to follow Sean. And when you're talking about life and death, and then you're talking about a sport, it's always, I always laugh because I played a game and Sean did it to serve our country, so it's always a little tough to follow that act. But I think, like I said, for me, it's been I think transformation is probably the greatest word. It's been a journey for me, to try to get to where I am today, to where I was when I was 15 or 15 to 20. And, I think I've come a long way as a person, and certainly as a father and as a husband, I've come a long way from where I was. But, I was in an environment where exactly what you said, masculinity, you couldn't show weakness. Right, you were constantly being challenged by teammates, by opponents, all the time, and then at the same time, you were trying to live out your dream, your childhood dream of playing professional sports. And for me, I was always a good hockey player. I was was talented, but I realized really quickly when I got to junior hockey when I was 17, 18 years old. I played in Red Deer, Alberta in a league called the Western Hockey League. I realized real quickly that I wasn't going to make it on talent alone. And if I really wanted to achieve my dream, I had to do something else. And that something else was fighting. And learning that skill set and having that skill set helped me get to the National Hockey League. And I think over the course of, from the time I was 17 till I retired at 28 or 29, I probably had 200 fights over that career. And a lot of that, and then fighting through injuries and not being able to talk about it or have anybody to talk to, in all honesty, played a huge part mentally for me. Like it was, this is something that just recently I've been able to talk about. It's mentally, there was demons there. There was demons there for a long time. There was concussion issues that I had that put me in a really dark place. And I had to fight out of that. Lucky for me, I had a wife. that I'd been with since I was 21 years old, that I met my first year of pro hockey. And I to this day, I think that if I didn't have her, I don't know where I would have went in that, what direction I would have went. And so I was able to get through those dark times and then continue to play hockey. And then really at 28, 29 years old to move on. So just to get back to masculinity, like it is tough in a locker room where you're constantly being challenged. And I think for me, I don't know if I handled it correctly at that time. If you want my honest truth, I probably handled it complete opposite of what I'm trying to teach today. I did not share emotions. I did not talk about my feelings. I did not talk about how if I was hurt or if I was having mental challenges. I didn't talk to anybody. I talked to my wife. That was it. And I think looking back on that, and then also now having a chance to teach young men, it's important for them to have somebody to talk to. It's important for you guys to have somebody to talk to, because that's where the problems arise, right? Like if you're stuck in your head the entire time, it's really tough to get out of it. And if you're stuck in your head and you don't think anybody else is going through it, which they are, it makes it worse, right? And so I think for the purpose of this conversation and kind of where I was when I was 24 years old or 22 years old playing in the National Hockey League to now being 50 and trying to coach young men, it's important that kids, everybody, men too. I think we have these conversations. Even I have these conversations with Sean. You have to be able to talk about it, and it's not a weakness. Masculinity is the ability to talk to others and share emotion and be honest. And sometimes that's very, very tough for men. But if you find somebody or a group of people that are willing to do it, your life changes. Because there's been times where Sean and I will be on the phone for an hour, and you probably two guys that you probably wouldn't expect to be talking about certain things that we talk about, but it's a gift for me. And I have that now with multiple men that we're bringing into our group that are able to talk, and we're able to share the challenges we have in life, the challenges, everybody's facing challenges. No matter what anybody tells you, we're all facing challenges. Some are worse than others, but they're all bad. So when it comes to masculinity, yes, I faced a lot of problems, probably didn't handle it right when I was your age. But life is a journey. And I think you guys are lucky that you have places like this where you can talk, right? And you can learn about different ways of masculinity, stuff that we didn't have, 30 years ago.
Yeah, like to add to that is that you probably see it. All the guys, the loudmouth in the room is usually the person that's going through the most, right? He's either having an inferiority complex or a lot of issues, right? And the guy that we always used to say, hey, the quiet guy in the corner, you got to be careful of him, right? Because he's probably confident in who he is, right? Confident in his skills and his ability, right? But from a masculinity point of view, like Pete said, the team room is an important piece, and and Pete coaches this. It's like, hey, the team room is for you. It's your brother, right? I remember like my son before Pete was his coach, but he was playing for Team Maryland, he would sit there. Another teammate was having a hard time, and all he'd do is just give him a simple glove tap and be like, "Hey man, it's all right. It's just all right. We're both going through this together." And the only reason I know that is his mom, the kid's mom, was telling me one time we're sitting in the stands, and he's like, "Hey, I really appreciate your son helping him get through this. It has been a tough 6 weeks or something." Same thing like in the military, like you're with a team room and it's your brother, it's the person you're serving with, it's one you're deploying with. It's the same thing. It's like, so team, it was only natural that I would go to team stuff when and my kids gravitated to team sports. Nothing wrong with any other sport. I just feel like sometimes with the team, you struggle together, you train together, you struggle together. You struggle through whether games or playoffs or championship. You're put in those positions where you're now forced to rely on one another, right? You're a team, right? And you've got to learn the dynamics. Not everyone's going to be bought in, right? And so one of the things that helps me, I have a nickname called Captain Furious, and there's a reason for it because I showed emotion all the time. I'm an Irish Catholic kid out of Massachusetts. I would, I get it off my chest. My wife can't stand it, but people think, "Oh, that's much." No, it's my way of dealing with it. I just let it out. I'm very transparent about it. That's my way of coping with it, right? It has nothing to do with who's the big boy on the block. Because one of the things I learned is there's a lot of guys out there that are really good at what they do, and the ones that I've had really great mentors and teachers and coaches in terms of the military where I grew up that are in senior positions now or have retired out of senior positions. And I tried to take some of those attributes with me, which was, hey, be hard but fair, right? Hold people to a standard. It's a great equalizer. And so when you look at that physical toughness, kids think that the toughness is making the hard hit on the ice or, I am going to go 24 miles and put 80 pounds on my back. And it's no, that's stupid, right? But what's toughness is being able to get up every day and hold yourself accountable, hold yourself to that standard day in and day out, and also hold others and be able to stand your ground, support the underdog. I'm a big believer in the underdog, right? Those are all diamonds in the rough. And masculinity to me is being able to be confident in who you are and be able to stand up for that young kid that needs a friend and being able to walk over there and bring them into your table or whatever in the cafeteria. That takes guts, right? That's real confidence. That to me is that's toughness, right? Because you're I don't care about my peers, what they got to say. I believe in who I am, and here's my standard. And just that little glove tap to that kid that's sitting by himself or that person, it means the world. And to me, that kind of is the same thing in anything you do. So just like Pete, it's transformative and in that regard.
What I will say to that too, one of the best things that happened to me is after my career had ended, I never talked about it to anybody, but the fear I would have before games, there's still places that I'll go, whether it be, driving to Philadelphia. There were certain parts where you knew you were getting close to the rink, and my job was my job, right? So I knew I was probably going to end up having to fight somebody, and the fear that would be in my head of losing in front of 20,000 people or getting knocked out and not being able to continue to provide for my family. And all these things were going through my head, and I never said anything to anybody. And years later, I think I was just having a beer with a friend, and he was a friend that I happened to have to fight when I was playing. And he would be like, I was so scared going into those games. And I was like, oh God, I can't tell you how, it was so, I thought I was the only one that was afraid. And I was like, why am I the only guy? How could these guys love to fight every night? And they were so good at it. And I was going into these things thinking I'm a fraud. I'm a pretender here. I'm terrified going into this thing. So to hear somebody else say that was going through it and feel, and it, and then, subsequently years later, and I talked to more guys, very few of the guys that did this job for a living had no fear. I'm sure there's a couple, and there are a couple guys that just were very good at it and didn't face any fear. But when you look at the guys that did it, and then you do look at like professional sports in general, and the guys that did that job, there was some, they had substance abuse problems. They had different ways of dealing with it, and my way of dealing with it was being quiet and getting a lot of sleep, because I didn't want to think about it, so I just slept a lot. So, I think that's important for kids to your age too to understand, is that you guys aren't alone in how you're thinking, right? And I think the biggest issue is not being able to talk about it, right? And I think that's, to have more people be open to having these conversations is very good. To open the conversation is the biggest thing, because everybody's feeling the same way. My son's feeling the same way, and they're not talking to their parents, right? They got to be able to talk to their friends, and their friends have to have the same attitude. And that's why being a coach with 22 kids in a room, it just gives you a ton of purpose, right? It gives you a ton of purpose to open up the dialogue. Well, just like Sean said, you can hold the line, and you can hold people accountable, or kids accountable. Everybody wants to be held accountable, and you got to hold that line. But it doesn't have to be a miserable experience. No. It can be a fun experience. Everybody knows what it is. Like Sean said, here's the standard. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's our values. This is how we operate. And then once that gets into the open, and people start to share, you start to have fun, because you're like, this is how we do things, and this is what is crossing. This is crossing the line, and this isn't crossing the line. And with kids, you have to continually be on top of it, and they will challenge you. And I think in life, everybody will challenge you. But if you're strong enough to hold the line and have that standard, like Sean said, and then have people to talk to, and then have those open conversations, the world opens up. It really does. So
yeah, and to Pete's point is, like, it's like I said, the standard. The more important piece is, like, once everyone buys in, once they all having fun, because they're all bought in. They all want to be around together, and they all want to do the right thing, right? And so, like, that continues to grow on itself. It's like it becomes that becomes like the esprit de corps, right? That's why, like, when you go in the military, they rip you all down, they shave your head, and they bring you in together. But by the time you're ending, you're all together. You're all the good, the bad, and the ugly. Everyone knows all your warts, right? But they see you for who you are. You're a brother. You're a teammate, right? And why is that? Because they're transparent. They're open about it. They've shown all of your warts out in the open. And then when it's there, it's liberating. You don't understand how liberating it is. Like, listen, I embraced Captain Furioso as my nickname. Why? My guys knew it. They knew I would get pissed over certain things, but we laugh about it. But they also knew that, like, that's, hey, the old man's gonna get mad at this, and let's just police it up, right? Well, that was out of respect, but it was also out of, like, hey, this is the standard, and he's gonna show emotion on it, because he holds us in such high regard and high standards that I kind of built this, like, even now with the guys I work with, they know I'm tough, but at the same time, they also know I'm loyal, right? So that's the other thing with this. It becomes loyalty. Being a good friend, a loyal friend, is telling them the truth, being transparent. Don't tell them what they want to hear. Tell them the truth. Hey, man, that was kind of messed up that you did that to your girlfriend, or to this guy over here, or you threw an egg at a house, or whatever it is, right? Like, that's kind of stupid. Like, what are you trying to gain out of that? Like, it just showed poor decision making, or, hey, short-term emotion with a long-term consequence, right? Those are things that you want to weigh. It's like, hey, what are you trying to do? Like, and trust me, I was that kid that like I fought a lot in high school and did stupid things, but I was fortunate to have that coach, or that teacher, right? The teach, coach, or mentor me, no pun intended, but, like, got ahead of me before I kind of fell to that. We call it the dark side, the left side or the right side, right? The left being dark, and the right being the right path. But, like, that's kind of like where Pete's in the locker room. He has that camaraderie. He holds the kids to the standards. But before they break the standard, you're already spotting, you're already assessing, you're using the other teammates to kind of tell you what's going on. You're using that network that's built around you to figure it out. And when in doubt, pull them in, talk to them. That's the same thing about that masculinity piece and being a man, in my mind, is looking out for each other, right? And being able to be able to say, hey, you all right? It's okay. Like you just broke up with your girlfriend and you've been with her for a year or whatnot, your partner, and like, what's going on? Like, hey, I get it. Instead of bad mouthing the whole thing, it's like, listen, it's going to be hard, but it's maybe the right thing. Take a break, or maybe start working out again, or and then maybe include them into your friend group again. Because sometimes kids at your age, I did it. You start dating a girl, you kind of lose your friends a little bit. Well, that's kind of where a true friend, right? Like being a man, right? It's not putting the guy down or like piling on to his pain or suffering that he's doing. It's being there to be in the corner. And I think that's real important because life's a roller coaster. It's not a merry-go-round, and you're going to have trials and tribulations. And listen, I've had 3 or 4 major knee surgeries, shoulder injuries. I thought my career was over. Pete's probably had a lot, but it's your teammates and the people that are around you that believe in you that kind of bring you in again. And so, there are times you're going to gut through things, like when you ask, like, oh, like being tough, like gut it out, right? Well, you're going to like no one's going to tell you to gut it out, right? Because that's going to be in your heart to do that, because you don't want to let your brothers down, right? Like there are times I was hurt. One time I was flying into some country right after 9/11, and I'm going, what the hell am I doing here, right? Like it just dawned on me that I'm not invincible, right? That you're not immortal. Like, it's not a video game. And so you kind of put things in perspective, and you kind of take a breath, and you look over, and you kind of have gallows humor, and we're all laughing. We're like, oh, I guess this is what we're doing for a while, right? But we recognize we're all in it together. Same thing where Pete was. You're all in it together, and you also realize that we're all scared. It's but the idea is you got to channel that anxiety or that like a little bit. You can't let it's different. Fear is not doubt, right? You don't let doubt come into your mind, but you want to channel that fear into action, right? And to like fall back on like, hey, take little pieces at a time, focus little steps, right? Little steps to success, and that kind of reinforces. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I actually wrote down what both of you said are defined as masculinity. So, Sean, you said masculinity is being able to be confident in who you are, and Pete said masculinity is the ability to be honest and share your own emotions. So, with what you just said as well, kind of relates to it. I feel like obviously we've seen this. I think we've all seen this, not only just being high schoolers, but also in your experience in the military and Pete's experience in the NHL and with hockey. But there's a certain barrier that kind of like prevents us from being who we actually are. And with this and with the importance of connection and like you said, like being there to, be there for your buddy in the most simplest sense. Why do you think it is that people build up this barrier when everybody around has their own struggle? And, how do you think, what's the advice for, a kid our age today, or even a man struggling with kind of not expressing who they truly are? What's the step in that and fixing that?
Take the step. Somebody has to take the leap of faith, right? Somebody has to step up, and that's true leadership. That's being a man. Like that's being a man is stepping up and saying, hey, I'm scared. Hey, I'm dealing with this. Hey, I have this problem. You'll be surprised of the. It's almost like you're in a business or on a team. The best businesses and the best teams rally around each other and communicate, right? But it always takes one guy who has this idea. And you see all these great ideas in business that they're crazy. You don't think for 1 second they're going to happen. And one person takes a leap of faith, and then you have people that follow. There, as a young man in a group of young men, somebody has to take a leap of faith and say, hey, I'm struggling here. And then try to find others to surround yourself with.
Yeah, I was also just going to add on, I think, especially as a teenager, there is so many of us who really want to really make that step, but they think that by making that step, they have to lose all of who they were before. They have to lose all of that kind of strong and that strength. And if they lose that strength and they speak out, then they become completely vulnerable. So I would say, how were you able to keep that balance between still being strong and confident in with yourself, but also being able to be vulnerable and taking that step without feeling like you're losing all of the strength that you've had within yourself?
It's been a transformation for me when it comes to masculinity and from where I grew up and how I was raised. I had two loving parents but not a ton of emotion was shared between us. Like, obviously I knew they loved me and I loved them. But just a different way of showing it, right? So I think, as I would say, when I was your age to the point of retirement, I probably handled it completely wrong, and just kind of kept that masculinity and toughness was fighting and battling and playing hurt and doing all those things, and not really talking about it until probably the birth of my first child, who, when she was born, she had a seizure. Like, I watched her have a seizure while she was 1 year old. I think that probably had a big impact on my life. And then watching her grow and be successful, and watching her brain rewire itself, and having that faith in God and that things would change. And then obviously having three more children after that, and understanding them more, and being able to talk to them. So I think it's been a journey, and I hope that for young people, that they don't have to wait 15, 20 years to find what I found, right? Like, it was a long journey of, and then, finding faith and having, finding God and doing all those things that I didn't have when I was a younger man, and then having it, and then trying to communicate it. And I think probably the best thing when I became a coach again, being able to bring those experiences back and then try to understand myself. And really probably been therapy for me, in all honesty. Like, all these conversations are always therapy, because you're able to communicate them to people and find other people that are going through them or went through some sort of trauma. And I think for me, just being comfortable in my own skin, and knowing that sometimes it's not about, telling the guy to gut it out. It's about pulling him aside and saying, what's going on at home? Are you okay? Is everything all right? What can I do to help? And then telling him my own fears and anxieties and trouble that I had as a young man, and how I dealt with them, and the thoughts that I had going on in my head when I was 22, 23 years old. I don't want young men to have those thoughts in their heads. It's not a good thing for them. And I'm blessed that I didn't not to act on those things, or was able to get out of them. So it is a challenge for young men. And I think for you guys, it's, again, I go back to, it's a leap of faith in finding your people and finding your community, and I give you guys credit, because you're brave to even have these conversations, to have this podcast, to have these questions. It's a brave thing that you guys are doing, and you're having, it's a great service that you're doing for other young people. And hopefully it continues to get even more and more of your people around you, because then it becomes that team, right, that we talk about. And now that team this is the standard of what you guys are creating. And you're creating a new standard for young men who are able to share. So it's probably a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah, it always, these questions bring up a lot of interesting thoughts for me.
Well, oh my goodness, Pete. And honestly, I've got notes all over my desk right here for new slides and new discussion topics, because there's so much ground that we covered today. But that last thing that you said was so profound, right? And I think that's a good spot for us to sort of close down this discussion. But I absolutely know I'm going to want you guys back on this podcast, because there's so many themes that we just touched upon and opened up that I think are so important for not only our boys, but also our men in general, because the things that were talked about, that simple sentence that you said, Pete, and someone looks at you from externally saying you're sitting in the pinnacle of your profession, you're in the NHL, to hear you say you're feeling like a fraud, it immediately connected to me, thinking I've been in finance for 38 years, and there'll be times I walk into a room and I'm like, everyone here is smarter than me, I'm a fraud, right? And I'm sure you guys go out on a Saturday night and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm inadequate, I'm a fraud. But this is a universal thing that all men, I think, we are all so disconnected now that if we could find one, like you said, one brave person to say it, everyone's going to relax and say,
it really
you
is.
feel that way too? Jeez. So to me, like, I love it with these podcasts because some point during each discussion, a title comes out to me flashing. And today's topic, we are not alone. That's what flashed out to me from this discussion. We are not alone. And I love that concept because so many men feel isolated, feel disconnected, feel alone. And that loneliness is such a impediment to being who we are.
Right.
And that's something I heard more about. And the other theme that I loved here was love. Every time we gather men around, what ultimately comes out is the topic of love. But we're so afraid to label it that.
Right.
And, Pete, I want to get to know you better. I loved our conversation. I am so inspired now from this discussion. Tell me, my co-host, how are you guys feeling now?
I think that I'm definitely feeling inspired by this. I'm feeling hopeful for the future and for the future of this podcast. And also grateful for both of your time and for having you. So thank you so much.
And I think one thing, Pete, that you said that really stuck with me and I think was going to stick with all of our listeners is to really taking that leap of faith and knowing that when you take that leap of faith, you're not going to drop down and fall down. You're going to continue to rise up, and taking that leap of faith is what will really propel you to the next level. And that's not what's going to bring you down. It's going to bring you up instead. And I think that's what everyone really needs to hear is be confident in taking a leap of faith because it can only bring you up and there's no harm in it. That's the only way you can really succeed, and not succeed, but just only way you can really progress in your life and really develop as a person is taking that leap of faith and knowing that you're not alone. And when you take that leap of faith, you're going to be surrounded by people who love you and care for you. And so just taking that leap of faith and knowing that people are there for you and that it will only go up, I think is something that our listeners can take away and very important.
Yes. So what a great discussion. Sean Doherty, Pete Leboutillier, thank you so much for being our guests and sharing so honestly and in such a heartfelt way. So another great episode, and I certainly hope we can get you guys back on for another discussion. So on behalf of I Have the Right To and the Aspire podcast, this is Alex Prout, Gabriel Viscogliosi, Hugh Eastman, saying thank you to all of our listeners, and we look forward to being with you again. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You're doing something really special. It's got a lot of purpose, and it'll be fun to watch your journey. Good luck, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe to the podcasts on all platforms. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends about Aspire. Follow us on social media at I Have the Right To. Learn more about our student and executive programming at our website at ihavetherightto.org.
This has been a Ben Hudak production. If you're curious about making your own show, let's chat. Click the last link in the show notes below.